Greetings, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I have drifted into the Underworld. The Star Wars Underworld. I have a bad feeling about this.
Here we go. We must go to the lower levels. The Underworld.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
You're after something.
Ben.
Since I've started the Underworld, I've met so many great friends.
Chris.
I grew up in the 1990s, and mall packaging is nostalgic for me.
Dominic.
What I love most about Star Wars is that it's fun, and it's all-round good times.
So, this is where the fun begins.
May the Force be with us.
This thing really moves!
Whoa! I like this!
I can't believe you came all this way to see me.
Why am I not in the intro? I gotta come up with a snappy line.
Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the Star Wars Underworld podcast, your weekly source for all the latest breaking Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. And this week, we are back to discuss our first updates on Season 2 of Ahsoka. We've got more insight into the Mandalorian, the behind the scenes, as well as what's going on with the Acolyte, or rather what's not going on with the Acolyte. And as always, we'll be answering some of your questions at the end of the show in our patented, classic, iconic Ask the SWU segment. All this and so much more. First, though, introductions are in order in case you're new to the show or you've forgotten who we are. That can happen. My name is Dominic Jones, and with me, as always, he's the founder of the Star Wars Underworld, Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
Hello, everybody. It's good to be back. And yeah, admittedly, a slow news week this week, but we're going to make the best of it. We're going to make the best of it. Okay. We're going to do all the things and discuss some stuff actually we've been holding on to for a couple weeks now, because we have been busy in previous weeks. And yeah, obviously get your questions in, and definitely if you have super chats for us, definitely send those in now. Give us plenty to talk about. If you give us enough super chats, we'll just stay here all night.
Yeah, I guess we could go for many hours. And don't feel the need to limit your questions just to, Star Wars. We'll answer any question.
Literally anything.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
Within reason. Okay. We reserve the right to not answer your question.
Yeah. Chris isn't here, so we can't do a segment on linguistics or something. Because I feel like if Chris was here, we could answer so many more questions. Also with us, as always, from the Raeside, it's Hannah Raeside.
G'day there. Great to be back for another week. Very excited to talk all things Ahsoka. I have my Ahsoka shirt on today. It is, of course, 1 year, in Australia at least. It'll be for tomorrow for you guys. 1 year since episode 4 of Ahsoka, which was, of course, the climactic ending to that episode was Anakin coming back on screen, saying hello, Snips, and creating quite the whirlwind. Wow. What a return. So really excited to talk everything Star Wars today. It's going to be good.
It does not feel like it's been a year since Ahsoka came out.
Right.
That's
wild. Right.
It feels very, very recent. And it's kind of insane that it's going to be so long until we see it again. It'll be a very, very long time. We'll get into that and a lot more coming up in a few minutes. First, though, a couple of reminders. As always, we want to remind you to subscribe. Punch the subscribe button, Chewy. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, to the podcast feeds, to the social media channels, all of it. Subscribe to it. If you're listening live and you want to support the show financially and ensure that your question gets in for Ask the SWU, you can super chat with us. That really helps us out. You can also become a channel member. You can subscribe and review on any platform that allows you to leave a review, like Apple Podcasts. And also join the Discord for fun things that happen in between shows. There's game nights, movie nights. Ben, what's coming up? What are you and Joel cooking up these days?
Well, actually I haven't talked to Joel in a bit, so I need to actually get some updates from our Baron administrator of the Discord. But we had a game night last week, and that was a heck of a lot of fun. And I know we have a freaking pile of Young Jedi Adventures episodes to still get to, so eventually we're gonna have to get back to them sooner or later to get through them.
The Young Jedi Adventures watch through, this chronological order idea that you had. Well, there's a second season. Second season's coming out.
But also, I'm really excited because apparently Maz Kanata is in this new season.
Okay.
Another character, like stuff that like nobody in the
interesting
fandom is
cameo.
talking about. I'm like, how is this not huge news that like these major characters are showing up in the show? It's crazy.
Who's playing Maz? Is it Lupita Nyong'o?
That's
or
a
is it
very good
somebody
question.
else? Okay.
Like there's a ton of like special guest stars on that show, like famous guest stars that like nobody talks about.
Let's talk about Maz Kanata for a second. We'll get back to the plugs in a minute. I remember when Force Awakens came out. I remember thinking like, oh, this is a character. They've introduced this new character to do a lot of things with this character. This character is 1,000 years old. They have a history with Han Solo. This is a character that's going to pop up in everything. And she had one scene in Last Jedi and like a handful of lines in Rise of Skywalker and nothing else. Like, I know she's in the High Republic books and stuff and she's popped up in the books, but where has she been why wasn't she in Acolyte or Andor or Mandalorian? Like she could show up everywhere. Why is it that our latest Maz Kanata stuff is going to be on screen is going to be Young Jedi Adventures and not somewhere else? It felt like a character that was going to be important, and then nothing came of it.
I don't understand it. Like that's such an interesting character. I was admittedly very disappointed with how her like the diminishing returns she had in the sequel trilogy and how interesting of a character she was. And considering that she had a relationship with Han and that she's been around for freaking a millennia, and yeah, she's just not showing up. Like it makes total sense that she would show up in the High Republic. Also, the other character that actually had way more experiences than Maz Kanata, David Tennant is coming back to voice Huang for Young Jedi Adventures. That's
Seriously? This guy loves the franchise.
They got David Tennant. They got David Tennant to be part of it. That's pretty wild. I gotta give him credit for that. Another character, or another sort of like that I expected them to do more with. Max von Sydow's character. What's his name again? Why am I blanking?
Lor San
Tekka. Thank you, Ben. Yeah, Lor San Tekka, another one that I felt like this is a character that has history with Luke, with Leia, with Han, with the whole clan, and he's never really popped up in anything outside the Poe Dameron comics. I know again his family has a role in the High Republic stories, but like this, I don't know, feels like a character that there was a lot of potential. There was so much potential coming out of Force Awakens. And
I mean, Star Wars is this franchise that it truly feels like there are no small parts. And it's elevated by the fact that you've got Max von Sydow, this legendary actor who played just one character in literally one scene, and he's dead, like he's gone, and just opens the movie. That's it. And there's tons of other examples. I mean, look, we've got a freaking Boba Fett show and all the Boba, like the Mandalorians galore, because this one dude in the background of The Empire Strikes Back is just like, oh yeah, that dude's cool, we like him, and now that's become a whole thing. Like Star Wars is the ultimate in like fans demanding something, or like just the creators going like, okay, we're into this character. So it is weird that we now come to expect this. We're like, this character, they're gonna show up, they're gonna do something with them, and then nothing really comes of it. And it's never too late. Obviously, they could do things. Unfortunately, Max von Sydow is no longer with us, so I think that's him reprising the role was never really an option. But I think doing something with a younger actor, or just in the comic, like they have done a little bit in the comics, but something else, animated, whatever.
Yeah, that's I don't know. I remember seeing Force Awakens and thinking, oh, look at all of these characters that are going to be explored and spun off in interesting ways, in different ways, but and it never happened.
I think there's still potential though. Like I think that's the exciting thing for me with Star Wars now. Like we analyze and talk about like the narrowing of shows, and they're not doing as many things, but I really do think we're building to a time period of Star Wars storytelling where we'll go back to, hey, let's tell the story of, this Ren, Kylo Ren and the Knights of Ren. Let's tell the story of Snoke and who this ultimate villain is. I really think we can even see it in the content we get now, like the Bad Batch storyline and the things being shown up in Mando as well, Mando seasons of cloning. Like we are building to that. I wouldn't be too surprised if in the next in about 3+ years time we're actually start diving into these real sequel based characters. It's time can still come. Maskinata, bring it back.
It takes patience, because we also have to remember that, like, going back to the original trilogy, and we had the original films, and then we had nothing for a very long time, and then it took freaking 15 years to get the prequel trilogy, and and all that stuff, and through all that, it took time to build on these stuff. And I think if you could launch a criticism of Star Wars just overall, is that Star Wars tends to reference itself maybe a bit too much, especially these days. I think Star Wars is best when it's like moving forward, introducing new characters, and maybe we'll come back to that when there's a right time and a right place for that. But constantly going back to the well, I think, can be, not the best idea.
Yeah, and I guess that's sort of an advantage of how rich the universe can be, is that they can create characters that we think, oh yeah, there's got to be more for this character, and then they just turn out to be they were actually just excuse me. I actually had when thinking about Max von Sydow, thinking about Lor San Tekka, I remember after seeing Force Awakens, I had a moment where I realized, oh right, the rest of the world doesn't always know that there's a wider Star Wars universe than just the movies, because we were leaving the theater in wherever Mississippi that we were, Bet, and it was after that second screen. Remember, we got invited to a second screening with the radio station,
right? The midnight screening after
the midnight screening,
screening.
Yeah, with 107.1 The Monkey.
You guys were staying in a hotel across the parking lot from the hotel, from the theater. We go at like 7:00. We see the movie. We walk across the parking lot to do a podcast, first reaction. And we walk back to the theater at midnight to watch the movie again, because it was 102 The Monkey, I think was the name of the radio station, was sponsoring this thing. And they brought us on up to the front of the theater, like, hey, ask some trivia question to the audience. And I'm like, I don't know what to say.
I Chris and I went in completely different directions with that, because I'm like, I need an easy question. Who played Darth Vader in the movies? And Chris was like, name all 12 members of the Jedi Council in the Phantom Menace. I don't think anybody got it right. But as we were leaving the theater after that screening, I remember I was talking to the guy from The Monkey, whose name was Tic Tac. And I said to Tic Tac, Tic Tac, I think they're going to do more with the Max von Sydow character. And Tic Tac said to me, he goes, how? He's dead. And I went, oh, right. Yeah, that's right. I'm thinking about books and comics and video games. And you're like, I just watched him die on screen. What more could they possibly do with him?
It's like I'm imagining a similar conversation happening in 1977. Somebody walking into the theater. I think they'll do something more with that Alec Guinness character. And then the person turns around, what? He's dead.
He's dead. Yeah. Anyway, that was an interesting tangent. Matthew Hardy does confirm that Lupita Nyong'o does not voice Maz in Young Jedi Adventures. We have a new actor playing the part. Let's finish the plugs. Follow us on social media at the SWU, and that includes the all-important Threads account that we have.
Throw us a thread.
Throw us a thread. You know what, Ben?
Yeah.
While we queue up this next story, can you get the results from our poll from last week?
Oh,
can you find that for us?
Interesting.
I'd like to know how
I'll look it up.
Hang
on.
How that went. And
get ready to weep, Dom.
I'm worried. But
okay, so coming in on Threads with
no time to wait, Dom.
Yeah,
40% of the vote. 101 votes total. Nyx won the poll.
Yes.
On Threads.
Yes. Where is my Nyx? Oh,
Threads.
Yes.
Threads users are wrong. And who came second?
Who came second? So Nubs came second with 33% of the vote. Merly third with 14% of the vote, and Basil trailing at number 4 with 12% of the vote.
Check the other sites. Damn it. I
Okay,
need to
so
know.
on Twitter, with 245 votes reporting in, with 46% of the vote, Nyx has won the Twitter poll. So two out of 3 for Nyx. Nubs gets 27% of the vote. Basil gets 17% of the vote. So you're moving up the field, Basil. And Murley wins 10% of the vote.
See, Twitter users are slightly better. And who won on Facebook?
I've got to scroll, and I'll tell you in a second.
I you know what? I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that Nyx is winning. It's the newness. It's the newness. Everybody flocks to the new thing. If we did this poll, 6 weeks ago or a couple months ago, Basil would have won. I will maintain that.
No,
He's just in denial, isn't he?
You're just grasping at straws here, buddy.
Okay. I probably am. All right, Ben, while you figure out who won on Facebook, we will start talking about Ahsoka season 2. Natasha Liu-Bordizzo, who plays Sabine in the series, was at Dragon Con this past weekend and confirmed that production for the series will begin summer 2025, summer of next year. That means they won't start filming the show until at least 2 years after it's come out, and which means it likely will not be released until close to 3 years after it's come out. Hannah, we'll throw to you. What's your reaction to this news, and how do you feel about these massive gaps between TV seasons?
Yes, I have multiple thoughts here because initially seeing this, it's like, damn it, I'm super impatient. I hate waiting, and I hate waiting for things I super love, and I super love the Ahsoka show. So, bummer. But then I started thinking logically, or tried to start thinking logically. There's quite a few things going into this time frame. One thing I think, it is quite logical. Like, as much as it's like, oh, that's super far away, it does make sense because that sounds about the time. If we're already into the Mando movie production and we're going to be in that, say, for the next 9 months, that's about, time that's lining up. Hey, we're going to, they wrap doing the Mando movie, give Dave a week off to just take a breather, champ, for carrying Star Wars
the entire show.
Yeah. And then they go, all right, everyone back on set. Let's start up with Ahsoka now as well. And I do wonder that, it's so interesting how it's all interconnected with John and Dave doing the Mando movie, and then Dave, kind of heading the Ahsoka show, obviously. Like, I wonder if they are actually, not trying to do the show quicker because maybe there's more of the story that Dave can tweak of, like, what the story they tell in the Mando movie will probably have some sort of effect in the Ahsoka show in terms of Thrawn being the potential villain in the movie. Maybe, in the movie, we almost pick up the storyline of Ahsoka. Thrawn's back and Dathomir and all that kind of stuff. And then that is, then we see the movie in 2026, May 2026. And then perhaps, the Ahsoka show could almost, come after that. Like, I think it's going to be very interwoven with the movie. That's why I keep mentioning the Mando movie. So to me, as much as I'm like, oh, that's super far away, it actually makes a lot of logical sense because I think a lot of the key people and key workers, especially Dave, but also I think a lot of the team that will be on the movie will be on for the Ahsoka show, and that seems to line up for me logically, if that makes sense. But bummer that it will be kind of far away, but also if it means good storytelling, they're taking their time with the quality, they're taking their time to not rush things and rush people and making it, a not enjoyable experience for the creatives behind it, then by all means take its time because I'm very keen for a season 2.
Yeah, it seems like the people who, like you said, the people who are making it, they're not going to split the team. It's like we're going from Mando to Ahsoka to Heir to the Empire, probably, or maybe something else in between. Who knows? But it's like we're going from one thing to the next thing. Like it isn't John's doing his thing and Dave's doing his thing. They're sticking together, which I think is best. I think the two of them work best when they're working together. And there were points, I think, last year with Ahsoka and Mando 3, where you're missing a bit of the Filoni influence on Mando and missing a bit of the Favreau influence on Ahsoka. And so by keeping them together, and John is obviously directing Mando and Grogu, so he's focused on that, and Dave can spend a little bit more time writing Ahsoka, but they're still working as a tandem instead of splitting off and trying to focus on other things, all while overseeing Skeleton Crew, which was filming around the same time. Ben, what are your thoughts on waiting until summer of next year to start filming the Ahsoka show?
Yeah, it's interesting. First of all, results from Facebook.
Okay.
So coming in at first place with 209 votes total in the poll, Merle has won.
What? You know what? That makes sense. That makes sense. It's Facebook and cats. That makes sense. I can say.
Yeah, there's a lot of cat people on Facebook. Me being one of them. Nyx comes in at number 2. Nubs at number 3, which leaves good old Basil trailing at the very, which I say fair, because Basil's a little traitor, okay? He's a sus little dude. I'm not sure how I feel about him.
Look, the thing about democracy is everybody gets a vote, everyone gets a voice, and people are allowed to be wrong, and we just have to accept that. So,
it's true. It's true.
Ben, let's talk about Ahsoka. What do you think?
Yeah, let's get on the subject here. Let's get on topics. Yeah, so it is interesting. Obviously, a lot of big reactions to this online I saw, and rightfully so. I think everyone, really enjoyed the Ahsoka. It's one of my favorite series, as I've talked about. So yeah, I'm bummed to wait for it. I will put this up front, and this was this news kind of came via Mandoverse updates on Twitter. They're great if you're into everything going on with the Mandoverse. They're a great page, but there was some people were kind of taking and saying like it'll film in summer of 2025, which could be true, but in their one of the original posts, they said by summer 2025, which could be different depending on, we don't have a quote from Natasha saying this. We just have kind of secondhand information. So how that, if anybody out there was at DragonCon and they like have audio and they have like proof of what she said, I would love to hear it. Because some of this con stuff can get misconstrued, as we learned with the Tim Morrison stuff a few weeks ago. So you never know. But either way, it's still going to be a long wait. I mean, it could be a variety of factors. I mean, I'm just thinking, we've never had a correct me if I'm wrong, have we ever had a Star Wars TV show and a Star Wars movie in production at the same time? Does this go back to, I guess,
Rise of Skywalker? Rise of Skywalker and Mando have been around the same time.
But they were running at full speed at the time. I'm wondering, like, if they really want to take their time with these productions and not have multiple things going on, and just say, okay, we're just going to do this and whatever else, and focus on one thing at a time. I think also just from a Filoni Favreau perspective, I think obviously we have talked about it. You just said it. Mm-hmm. I think they work best together. I think probably they know that. And, these two things are kind of their babies. And, I think maybe they're hesitant to like really start splitting hairs and splitting their time. And also, like Hannah said, a lot of the same crew is going to be working on it. I would venture to say maybe even some of the cast members. I wouldn't put it past them to have good old Ezra Bridger or Harrison Dula or Chopper or any of these guys show up in The Mandalorian Grogu.
Think about what little we have seen of the Mando Grogu movie. Who's one of who got one of the biggest pops in that trailer? Zeb. Exactly. And Ahsoka is basically live action Rebels in a lot of ways. So, and the one missing Rebel in Ahsoka was Zeb. So yeah, it would be cool to get a moment between Hera and Zeb or Ezra and Zeb or any number of these characters. It would just seem to make sense. I will say though, this does seem to reflect what we've been talking about a lot in the last couple of weeks, which is the shifting philosophy around Star Wars and TV. This year we had Acolyte, we had Bad Batch, and we'll get Skeleton Crew kind of at the end of the year. I'm not forgetting anything, am I? No.
Don't think so.
Don't think so. Yeah. So we had those. So next year you'll have a little bit of Skeleton Crew and Andor, and potentially something animated. That's 2025. 2026. It sounds like it'll just be Ahsoka. It sounds like it's one. This might just be one Star Wars show per year going forward.
To jump in there with those numbers is that one thing I think would be the sweet spot is the one thing that's the sweet spot would be one live action show a year, one animated special show a year, Tales, like a Tales or a clone show, one season of something animated a year, and then every 2 years have a movie. I think for me, knowing the live action we got, knowing the animation we got, I think that would be the best balance, in my opinion.
I agree with that. I think obviously as a Star Wars content creator on the internet who wants to come on this podcast every week and have something to talk about, like, it's great to have. It's very easy to do the show notes for the show, which is like, oh, new episode of Ahsoka, new episode of The Mandalorian, boom, we know what we're talking about this week. It's very easy. As a Star Wars fan, I've found that I don't like it when there's some stuff's coming out so quickly, because I really feel like I want the time to process it and rewatch this stuff. And I hated when we had, crossovers between The Mandalorian and Bad Batch, two excellent shows that I really loved, that I feel like I couldn't give each of them the proper time and proper things to actually stew on those episodes and really enjoy them, because you was just like, watch Bad Batch, watch Mandalorian, we got to do this. And it's just so much going on. I think, I know a lot of people are probably used to the fast pace and they're like, oh, one show a year, how dare. I'm like, I'm fine with that. If they do one show a year, if it's even like one live action or one animated show per year, I'll be like, that's fine. Just give me something. Just give me something one per year. I don't want to go a full year without not getting anything. But, giving time to process and enjoy this stuff and giving them time to make it good and to do these things and not rush through this, that's important too.
Yeah. I honestly won't be surprised if it's not even one show a year, if it's a show every other year. I should specify live action. I think animation is a different animal. I think there's going to continue to be animation sort of coming out with the new show and a new sort of series of specials at least once a year. So like a Bad Batch and a Visions, or a Bad Batch and a Tales, something like that. But it wouldn't surprise me if they want to get to a place where the live action series truly become events. I was talking when I went on Ion Cannon, Joel and I talked about this a lot of, when you dive into that all the numbers that were published that sort of were meant to sort of justify the cancellation of the Acolyte, the show that had the most hype going into it, where the numbers were the highest for the first couple of episodes, was Obi-Wan Kenobi. And it was billed as this big event. It is the missing chapter in the Skywalker saga. It is the rematch of the century between Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi. It was all of those things where it was like, this is can't miss television. Now, people can disagree about whether or not it lived up to that. I think it did, but I know not everybody shares that opinion. But I think that's what they're going to be looking for now. Instead of, here is a new Star Wars thing every couple of months, like, oh, here's Andor, here's Skeleton Crew, here's Mando, here's Book of Boba, here's Obi-Wan. I think it's going to literally be like what every other year you get something like Ahsoka that's like, this is a essential chapter to what is now playing out on the big screen. So do not miss it. And then a couple years later, you get something else that's like, here is, you know, I don't know, pick a character. Here's the Poe Dameron show. Like here is something that's really important. Or here's something that's
Dude, the way you say his name is it's blowing my brain cells away.
How do I say it?
Dameron. What? Dameron. I say
definitely
Dameron.
not how Poe says it. Poe says Dameron. I'm Poe Dameron.
Dameron.
Well, George says George says the wrong thing for Han, so I feel okay saying Dameron or Dameron.
Fine.
It definitely reads Dameron. Okay, that's the phonetic.
Dameron.
I love it.
Dameron. A Poe Dameron story. I want a Poe Dameron story here.
Dameron. All right, continue. Sorry.
But like, you know, or it could be something that ties in with one of the new movies. Like if there's a continuation to the James Mangold, like Dawn of the Jedi story, that there's a character in there.
Temiri Blag, a Star Wars story.
Spins off. Yeah, something like that. Or, you know, a couple of years down the line, we go, here is The Stranger. Here is the continuation of The Acolyte. Here's 4 episodes about that. Once that show has been off the air for long enough for people to miss it, much in the same way Clone Wars had to go away for long enough for people to miss it. But I wouldn't surprise me if the focus truly just becomes on movies and animation as like a yearly release and a TV show every 2 years or every 3 years, but make it so that it's cannot miss absolutely essential, you know, what they build Obi-Wan as to be is kind of a way I suspect it might be going.
Yeah. And being that so many of these things are going to be seemingly interconnected, all the Mandoverse stuff, like, you know, they need time to connect all those things and plan them out and, you know, and doing all this stuff. Similar to, we keep bringing up the Marvel model, but, you know, it is like this, you know, kind of overarching story that's going forward with that. I'm hoping, and I'm assuming we'll get other things other than Mandoverse, but, you know, I think that's going to be the big juggernaut going forward. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle that and, you know, how that goes, because I think, you know, there's a lot of possibilities, but I think as much as I kind of like go against the whole like oversaturation idea, I think there is a danger of that. And I think it does make it more special when you pull back and go like, okay, you're getting one Star Wars thing this year, and then Star Wars is going to go away for a bit. It may not go away for 10 years or 20 years like we've previously had, but it may go away for 6 months and you're not going to hear anything, and then they'll come back. You know, I'm fine with that. Yeah.
I think we should enjoy the time in between the stories as much as we enjoy the stories themselves. Let's move on. Let's talk about a Star Wars story where a really interesting and exciting Sith Lord was introduced in the last few minutes of the story, only for that story's continuation to be canceled and not brought forward. No, we're not talking about The Acolyte. We're talking about Solo, a Star Wars story. Alden Ehrenreich is out and about these days. And of course, everywhere he goes, he gets asked about Han Solo. He was asked about the possibility of returning to the character by Access Hollywood. He said, "It's such a fun character. The story that I did is kind of like the making of Han Solo. So I got to be really like Han Solo. We know it, like the Han Solo we know and love in the last bit of the movie. It was if it was the right thing, it would be fun to play him that way." Ben, over to you. What do you think? Do you think there's anything to read into this, or is this just Alden doing what we all are doing and wish casting for more of that story?
I mean, first of all, I'm happy for Alden. Like he's I didn't know until this interview. I didn't realize he's in the new Ironheart show. Like that's what he was doing press for. He's in the Marvel Cinematic Universe now.
When he walked out on stage at D23, I was like, wait, what? He's here? Why didn't we announce something else with him? What's he doing?
Exactly. So look, I'm glad. Look, he didn't have a very big part in Oppenheimer, but he chewed up every scene he was in. Like, I'm glad he's getting more work. I'm glad he's out there. He's gonna build up his fame to where he can ask for even more money when Lucasfilm comes crawling back to him later in his career. But like I think this was an encouraging thing. I think, you know, some actors are very cordial, diplomatic in how they approach these things, seem kind of not care attitude about it. Other actors, I think, are more of a fan and more appreciate what Star Wars is and are eager to come back. Alden sounds like he's someone that would like really be interested in doing it again. And as he said, like, you know, it was really just getting started. Like, you really saw Han in his version of Han. You saw Harrison in his version of Han in that last 5, 10, 15 minutes of Solo. He was really playing it on hard. And I want to see him play more of that. I think that was great. I love Solo. Make Solo 2 happen. Yes, hell yes. I'm in that camp. I think, you know, as I keep saying, the Lando show is coming? Question mark. Hopefully. And man, just give us a scene, a cameo, something. I want him back as that character.
Yeah. Hannah, what are you thinking about the possibility of Alden's return?
Yeah, it's just so fascinating, the life that this movie has had and the journey it's been on. And I think one of the standout things for me in that movie is how much, like what we said, how much I believed that was Han Solo on screen.
Mm-hmm.
So I think definitely in the conversation of further storytelling, you know, Luke Skywalker in Mando, all these kinds of things, seeing these original characters come to screen, come to life, in the shows as well. It is something that I think still has so much potential for the future. So I would definitely be in the camp, say, you know, announce tomorrow we're getting the post Return of the Jedi show. I would absolutely want Alden to be back playing Han, because I think I just found his performance just so believable. It was so good. So good.
If we rewind the clock 2 years to when Book of Boba Fett was on, and there were all the rumors about like who could show up in that, including both Kira and Han being rumored at one point or another, neither of which came to pass. I was fully on board with the idea of Alden Ehrenreich being the guy to come back and play it, rather than doing what they did for Luke with the a deep fake AI CG thing. Not that I think that technology doesn't serve a purpose. It's just that I would rather have Alden do it because he's there, and why not? So
he's a real living person. You get real living human beings to play real human beings.
Yeah, exactly. What a concept. But obviously it didn't come to pass. But as the Mandoverse moves forward and the threat becomes bigger, and they've already included Luke, they kind of tiptoed around Leia in Ahsoka by having 3PO kind of be her emissary in a couple of, or in that one scene. Han is kind of the one that's missing. I kind of feel like the main three, the big three, or big four, if we want to throw Lando in there as well, I feel like they're going to have a part to play in this Thrawn storyline. Will it be as involved as the original Thrawn trilogy? Probably not. I don't think they're going to be the main characters. The main characters are going to be Din Djarin and Ahsoka and the other one, Sabine, the other one, and Jude Law and people like that. But I feel like the main characters of this Skywalker saga are going to factor into it in some way. And when it comes time for Han to show up, I very much hope it is Alden. Now, Ben, you brought up the Lando show, which has become the Lando movie. And this often gets brought up as the place to continue the Solo story. Donald Glover and his brother Steven are writing this movie. I understand why, it feels like an easy way to continue the Solo story just in a different medium without calling it Solo 2. I feel like I am almost hoping that Han doesn't show up in that. I kind of want to see Lando without Han. The only time we've really seen that is in Rise of Skywalker, and that was only for, a handful of minutes. All the other times we've seen Lando on screen, at least in live action, it's always been his relationship with Han, his character as it relates to Han Solo in Empire, less so in Jedi, but still to an extent, and of course in Solo. And I would really like to see a Lando story where it is Lando. It is just a Lando story. There aren't, members of other members of the main cast of the story showing up to steal some of the spotlight. I suspect that the Glovers might feel the same way in their rewriting of that story.
I like that idea because, I mean, you think about Lando, he is, outside of Rise of Skywalker, which I do like. That's one of the bright spots of that movie is Billy D. Williams and Lando in that movie. Like he is just like, he's Han's friend. he's Han Solo's buddy or old frenemy. And I think if you're going to do a Lando story, I think you don't want him to be overshadowed. I think, I think they've taken great, lengths to when they're doing interesting characters and doing these things, whether it's Luke in Mandalorian or, whatever else, trying to make sure that the main character isn't upstaged by that. And I think that could be as selfishly as I want Alden back as that character, ideally just make Solo 2 happen and let Lando be a part of it maybe, but also give Lando his own Solo story that he can be his own character and have, a cast around him, because a lot of stuff with Lando that has not been explored. A lot of stuff that I want. Come on, Calrissian Chronicles, make it happen.
And when you say give Lando a solo story, you mean a non-solo story, a solo story, but a non-solo,
a solo story without Solo.
Exactly, nailed it. All right, let's keep moving on here. Let's talk a little bit of Mandalorian. We haven't talked about Mandalorian in a little while. Let's actually talk about Mandalorian season 1. Bryce Dallas Howard directed a bunch of episodes of the series, including the 4th episode of the series, which is the sort of Seven Samurai inspired story. Mando and
the Sanctuary.
The Sanctuary, yeah. Mando and Grogu, they go to a planet that's being terrorized by pirates in an ATST, and they train the farmers there to fight back against the ATST. Again, it's the seven samurai tribute, and it's a fun episode. It's a really fun episode. It introduced the character of Omera, who's played by Julia Jones, a character much like Maz Kanata and Lor Santeca. I have kept expecting to show up again and has yet to do so. But during an appearance at Fan Expo Canada in Toronto, hey, that was a fun event. Bryce Dallas Howard took the stage. She was interviewed by Maggie Lovett from Collider and spoke about that episode specifically. She said, quote, "I will not take much credit for anything in The Mandalorian because that is Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni and, of course, George Lucas. And so I will not take much of credit for anything except for this. I love romance. I love romance. I love it. I love it. I love it." And she then describes how she had to ask Favreau if the woman farmer could have a name. She said, "Could the woman farmer have a name?" To which Favreau replied, "Of course. You know what? What do you want the name to be?" So,
woman farmer. That was probably in the script.
That was almost certainly in the script. Which, one, great that Bryce Dallas Howard was there to, give the character something more
from the brilliant mind that brought you Mithril in The Mandalorian.
Yeah. I gotta say, I've said this before, I'll say it again. Jon Favreau's scripts all read like first drafts, And there's nothing wrong with calling a character, Mithril or Mandalorian or woman farmer in the first, or man farmer in the first in the first draft of a script. But damn, you need to come up with some names. And boy, good thing Bryce Dallas Howard was there. Do we have any thoughts on this?
I vaguely related. Bryce Dallas Howard should get a Star Wars movie. I think she should direct. This is a crazy statement. Maybe not that crazy. I think that she should direct the Rey movie. I think the Rey movie should have been, if not, could already change to be in her hands. I wholeheartedly believe that.
Here's a perfect thing. Let Charmin Obey-Chinoy do the first movie. Do a trilogy, a Rey trilogy. Let Bryce do the next two.
But it's hard to do a trilogy when like Rey's already had a trilogy. Like, I'm not saying that I don't want more Rey content, but I feel like, well, I guess we had 6 movies of Anakin in a way, in a sense.
It's true.
Okay, I don't know.
Let
Let
me
me
showing up in the
ponder on
TV
that, Ben. That's fair. That's fair.
He keeps showing up in the in the TV shows too.
Yeah, Anakin can't get rid of that guy. Jeez, just
that guy.
nonstop Anakin for 20 years.
But yeah, Bryce, she's a great Star Wars TV director for episodes. Man, yeah, it's so cool to hear her still talking about episodes she did bloody 5 years ago now. That almost 6 years ago she would be directing that episode. So yeah, really cool. And I think she's just fantastic.
and I think that speaks to give credit to Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau specifically, like give credit to them for being collaborative and let Bryce Dallas Howard come in and play in that sandbox, and to ultimately be in a position where she can come in and say, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to explore this romantic angle that I think was a really interesting part of the episode. The whole thing, it was early on in Din and Grogu's things before we even knew they were Din and Grogu, to explore this idea of maybe they should settle down. Grogu's happy, Din's happy, maybe he could have a life with this woman. That's great. And I too am, I'm disappointed that they haven't come back to Omera. I think that's a character that I think easily could work back in, because you have the whole thing not only with her where she's like firing the gun and she's nailing all the shots with the blaster, and you're like, ooh, this character, like she's a badass, like she knows what she's doing. Also, there's something about her past that we don't know about that's interesting, that could be explored. Interesting. I was watching. Anybody else watch the one of the few Marvel shows that came out this year, the Echo show? I
did not.
see. There was literally the first character that pops up when you in the first scene of that show. I was looking at going like, who is this woman? I've seen her before. It was Julia Jones playing. She's in that. She's
nice.
She's one of the ancestors of Echo, the primary character. So it was driving me nuts for a while. And I was like, oh yeah, it's Omera. Oh my gosh. So yeah, she's still on the Disney Plus payroll. So just bring her back. Come on, guys.
Yeah. Although I think what this story with Bryce illustrates is why Omera hasn't come back, because there was no plan there. There was no intention for the character to come back. They did not see this character as anything other than a player in this one episode, so much so that they didn't give her a name until Bryce said, hey, how about we name this character and give her like a relationship with Din Djarin for an episod. Well, and it made the whole episode richer, right? Like it showed Din and showed Grogu like an image of what life could be. And if we actually look at the end of season 3, where he winds up, kind of on his homestead as a farmer, is not that far off. Probably should have gone back and gotten Omera and had her there for the end of the season. But
he could have gone back to Sorgan,
Yeah. Anyway.
But I think we all, as fans, we approach this and we assume, oh, they've got this giant plan, and they have, anytime they introduce a character, they have that whole thing planned out. We live in the age of sequels and spin-offs and cinematic universes, and the truth is that a lot of this stuff just doesn't happen. Speaking of another Jon Favreau production, like Iron Man was obviously supposed to be the kickoff of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but they like the idea of an Avengers movie at that point in 2008 was crazy, like to them. Like they were, just trying to make that work. They weren't planning on, of course we're going to do Avengers. Like maybe we'll do it one day. Like this stuff is not as planned. A lot of this stuff happens, kind of by accident, and also kind of just like a lot of people working really, really hard. And then sometimes it still doesn't work out.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Let's keep moving here. Let's move on to let's talk about Manny Jacinto. Manny Jacinto was also at Dragon Con, and he was asked if he had a personal life goal, and his response was season 2 of The Acolyte. Yeah, me too, Manny.
Same Manny.
Me too.
I also love that he said his favorite action sequence or his favorite like move to do was breaking Yord's neck. And he apologized. Yeah, he apologized to Steven. Yeah, that's pretty badass. I'll admit, even though I love Yord.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Look, I think the one thing that we can say about The Acolyte is if it is ever going to get some sort of continuation, which let's hope it does. Though I personally am still kind of pessimistic about it. I don't think it'll be a challenge to get the cast back involved. I don't think it's one of those things, one of those shows where everybody hated doing it. It sounds like, at the very least, it sounds like Manny had a good time and he might be on board for it. And, I think, I think Amanda Stenberg is somebody who, I think as we talked about last week, caught a lot of crap for no good reason. Right. But this is somebody who loves Star Wars so much. She showed up at Celebration dressed as Padme, right? Like,
yeah, this is not a rhetorical question. This is me genuinely asking. Has any Star Wars actor showed up at Celebration in costume, not as their character, but as a different character, like cosplaying? Like I know Ben Mendelsohn showed up as Director Krennic. Like that was the thing he did for the panel. Like, is there any other actor that has actually done that just for fun? Like she was cosplaying as Padme in that panel, and because she was just there as a fan also, and that just shows her commitment to like being, and just Google Amanda Stenberg Star Wars. There's so many pictures of her in Star Wars shirts. Like, come on, like she's such a fan.
Yeah, and then and like the third piece of that, the third character you would need for another continuation is Rebecca Henderson, who is literally married to the creator of the show. So I feel like
that's not thinking it's like it's not like they have to call all these people.
Some awkward negotiations there if she tried to like hold out for more money or something.
Honey, no, that's not doing that. You're gonna have to pay me a little bit more. But like seriously though, like they don't have to call that many people. It's like
they killed off the rest of them.
Amanda, and it's funny, a testament to how great of an actor Amanda Stenberg is. I keep forgetting that it's the same person playing Osha and May. Like I keep thinking of like, oh, the cast is bigger and Osha's no, it's Amanda is the same two different roles. It really that messes with my mind.
Yeah, it's quite impressive what you managed to pull off in the show. And yeah, you do think, oh, there's 4 characters that need to be brought back, and then you remember, oh right, just 3 actors though, because of what she was able to accomplish. All right, let's leave it there for the news for right now, and let's answer some questions. We'll jump into Ask the SWU. We'll get to some questions from Discord. We've got some super chats from last week, and you can also fire off some questions in the live YouTube chat as well, and we'll try and get to some of them as well. We'll start with the super chats from last week that we didn't get to. Joel Davis said, I think Disney will only see Star Wars in, quote, true crisis, unquote, when they start losing the money of the average general audience, when they don't tune into stuff. He goes on to say, I think one thing fans of The Acolyte can do is try to find ways to show many people who simply didn't watch it to try it out, to try and convince them to try it out, increase that audience.
I mean, I think
Yeah.
just like with anything, I think the appeal of the Acolyte will only improve, because the farther we get away from just this toxic nonsense that has been once basically the haters get bored and they move on to something else, and people can actually have like genuine opinions, good or bad, about a show without being pummeled with toxicity. I think viewed in a vacuum, I think that is going to look a lot better in the future. I think it'll be enjoyed by a lot more people, and hopefully it will be on Disney Plus forever. Don't you even dare think about pulling a Willow on that show, Disney. I swear to God. Yeah. So I think with that, ultimately it's gonna get better for the show, and I think Disney and Lucasfilm, they will unfortunately perhaps learn far too late that they made a horrible mistake. Or at least I hope they realize that now. I hope they actually do something. But yeah, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. We will see where things wind up, but ultimately, yeah, the if you want the show to continue, tell people about it, watch it again. That's what's going to speak louder than every petition and hashtag and everything else out there, is if more people tune in.
100%.
And here's the thing. Here's something else you can do. It's all apples and oranges maybe, but it's something small that I've decided I'm going to do. The new Kelnaka comic is out. And not only do I want to read the comic, it's a one shot. And I don't want to get more in Star Wars comics. I just want to put a little bit more money, a little more thing of just let's make this comic just do really, really well. Let's pump it up. Let's just make Disney feel that much more bad that what at canceling the show.
Yeah, that's that might be a way to affect things. Although, albeit again, I think the numbers on the show are going to speak louder than anything else.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to a question from the Discord. This one comes from Gilster10, who says, if you could choose one group of guards to protect you, who would you choose? The Magna Guards, that's Grievous's bodyguards, the Imperial Royal Guards, or the Praetorian Guards? He says, I would choose the Magna Guards because they fight Jedi on a consistent basis, are tough to destroy, and have cool electro staffs. Who's your bodyguard?
See, this is go ahead, Hannah.
Yeah, I was going to say, was he just saying any droid, ever?
No, the specifically the Grievous bodyguards.
What was the question? What? Say the question again.
Who would you choose to protect you? What group of guards would you choose to protect you? The Magna Guards, which is the Grievous's bodyguard.
Oh, right, yeah.
The Imperial Royal Guard, or the Praetorian Guard?
Well, that's my issue. I want to say neither, because I want a HK droid to protect me. I want none of those. I want HKs.
I'm
pretty good.
Yeah, that's the thing. I want to say Magna Guards because they're cool, and also, I mean, you can cut their heads off and they still keep going. That's cool. But also, Star Wars spends a lot of time showing them just getting sliced and diced. And I'm not sure how effective they are. Same with the Praetorian Guards. Praetorian Guards are cool. They obviously give Rey and Kylo a run for their money in a fight, but they also get absolutely destroyed by two Jedi. One Jedi, one kind of Jedi. I want to say the Imperial Royal Guards only because we haven't seen them really in a fight, but also they did do their job. It was only when they weren't around when Palpatine got his comeuppance. He told them to leave, and that's when he got killed.
That's so true, and that's such a good point about everything that we've seen about manga and also Praetorian. I'm confusing myself. Yeah, Praetorian Guards. It's always just them being absolutely demolished. So, I mean, I feel like maybe if you're not, if you're a commoner, say if it was saying you're just a pleb in the Star Wars universe, and you don't have any powers. You're not a Jedi. You're not a bounty hunter. You got no other way to protect yourself. I think it'll be like a solid way to protect yourself if you're like just like a farmer on some planet. You know what I mean? But if you're against bigger foe, I think you would have to go. You might be right. The Imperial Guard might be the way to go.
Right, because I'm thinking, what other guards have we seen in Star Wars? Like those are the big ones.
Yeah,
but like I don't know, like Jabba has his henchmen that are of all
There's a lot of henchmen.
And,
There's a lot of henchmen.
I mean, they're
because
all designed to be cannon
Pike,
fodder. So.
Like true. Like the Pikes have guards, but like I feel like every species has some sort of version of like their security. In varying degrees. So yeah, that's interesting.
I'll just answer the question. Praetorian guards, because whenever they're on screen, they fuck shit up, and it's awesome.
That's so good.
All right, let's move on. Next one comes in from Vlad Sander on the Discord. Says, wow, the announcement dropped late. Thanks at Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
Yeah, that one did. Last week, I dropped it like 2 hours before the show. Sorry about that. You guys came in clutch, though. I appreciate it.
He says, I haven't yet checked out Outlaws. My next game has to be the remastered Bounty Hunter. I owned it on PlayStation 2 and want to allow my kids to play it too. Aw. I did, however, have a question/comment again concerning the Acolyte. What are the host's thoughts on the fact that Hayden Christensen, Jake Lloyd, Ahmed Best, Moses Ingram, John Boyega, and Kelly Marie Tran all faced online backlash, and now Amand Listenberg is as well? I know Ahmed Best and John Boyega have both voiced their opinion in support of the Acolyte and Amand Listenberg. Continuing, do you think we may either get a novel or some other way that Disney may continue the story? I really want to see more in the Acolyte story. So first and foremost, thoughts on the fact that all those actors listed have faced backlash and hate from quote unquote fans.
Right. Yeah, I think it is needed, and I think there's there has been, like what you mentioned of John and Ahmed, such a wonderful show of support to her, because I think what I'm seeing most prominently is a lot of people are getting the confusion of, genuine criticism of the show. You didn't like the writing, didn't like the story, the character, that's fine. Talk about that. And a lot of people do talk about that. I talk about that a lot of so much of what I didn't like about it. But it's the saying it's not good because of this person's race and or this person's sexuality, or how they're a part of their identity is like, that's the insanity and inequality that just cannot exist in our society anymore. And so saying no to it is important. And it's like, it's when you're not going to get beat around. And I think examples of what Ahmed went through, prominently I know most well about his experience. Like I've heard so much of what he's talked about it. I think it's so special that he reached out. Well, yeah, reached out in that way, and also just showed his support in the way, because I think it shows, hey, so Star Wars, true Star Wars fans, we've seen this before. Like, this has happened before. It's one thing to not like a character. It's one thing to not like a show, a story, an episode, but it just being downright like putting down a human is never going to be acceptable. It's never going to be taken as, oh, that's a fair critic. It's never going to be taken as that. So I think it's just so special that we can share that togetherness from other Star Wars actors.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, ultimately this has been happening forever, like with everything. And like, it's obviously there's a ton of actors and creators who have gotten intense harassment, like that's, I mean, and yes, a lot of those people were just white dudes. Like there's a lot of people that hate Rian Johnson. I've seen a lot of horrible things, and let's not forget, like, George Lucas also was a white straight dude, and he freaking sold Star Wars so we didn't have to put up with everyone's crap. So that's just kind of the baseline, like, toxic fandom that we are all familiar with. But if you're paying attention, you've seen the comments, you've seen those tweets. It just gets worse when there's people of color, when there's women involved. And it just, and there's things that some of them are less obvious about it. Some people are very obvious with where they stand, and it's really, really disgusting. But ultimately, it's just like, I think ultimately we have to do a better job of not just defending people, because I know Lucasfilm has in the past, they haven't been doing something lately, but they put out statements in defense. Like, Moses Ingram was getting a lot of stuff, and there was Ewan McGregor came out and defended her, and I think that's great. Like, anytime, they should do their best to defend, and we as fans, I think, have a responsibility to put a stop to this and say something. But I think also just being positive and ultimately giving praise when we really enjoy something, when we really enjoy an actor and their performance, like, we need to say so, because the people that don't like it, they're not going to shut up about it. I'm sorry. And, you can have an opinion. Like, if you didn't like Amandla Stenberg's performance, that's totally fine. Obviously, that's totally fine. But when you're a little too wrapped up in your opinion about that, and you're a little too overeager to share that opinion all the time, or you're saying certain things, it's pretty obvious where you're coming from. And that's unfortunate. So I think, like, I think we have to be as passionate. We really have to be as passionate as people, as the haters, loving this stuff.
Yeah. I just random side note. I just remembered it as you were speaking there, Ben. I posted a video of myself earlier this week, and I was wearing an Attack of the Clones shirt, and I had someone being like, Attack of the Clones, that shit, that's what a terrible movie. And I'm like, and I literally just reply, like, I don't usually reply to these like crappy comments, but I was like, Attack of the Clones haters still exist, bro. Like, you're still out here, like,
called. That's
being
your
mad. I know. I was like, you're
back.
still like, I'm so don't like this movie.
Yeah,
like,
I am so like, I mean, like,
dude.
Yeah, like, I am so surprised. Every once in a while, I will come across, because I for some stupid reason, I still read comments, and I go into usual comment sections, and of course, I moderate all our stuff, and I'll like, whoa, it's a prequel hater. You guys where have you guys been? You just
Like,
it's so surprising when you come across one. It's
Like,
endangered species.
Wild.
2011 all over again. Yeah. Agreed with everything you guys have said. And I'll throw in there, one of you brought up Ewan McGregor and what he said and what he did after Kenobi came out. To me, that's what I'd like to see more of from Star Wars actors. So in that regard, big shout out to John Boyega and Ahmed Best for stepping up for Amandla this time. But like, I think about like when this first popped up with the new movies, when the first Force Awakens trailer comes out and some people are mad that there's a black stormtrooper, like, imagine if Harrison Ford had responded the way Ewan did to the Moses Ingram stuff, right? Like, imagine if Harrison Ford had done that, or Mark Hamill had done that. Like, it would have set a completely different tone instead of allowing it to fester. It still would have festered. Like, you can't get rid of it for sure entirely. But like, if Harrison Ford had spoken out the way Ewan did, and that's why I have a great admiration for Ewan McGregor for a lot of things, and that is among them. And I keep saying Harrison, but like any of them could have, and instead they all tried to downplay it. I think there was a company-wide mandate to downplay it, which John has spoken about in the more recently, and I don't think he looks back on that too fondly.
I understand. I totally understand from a corporate point of view that anytime you address stuff, it's the Streisand effect of you're trying to make something go away, but you're simultaneously bringing attention to it. Mm-hmm. But And I get the whole don't feed the troll, blah, blah, blah. But that stuff, these people just aren't going away. Like, this is not a problem that is diminishing. It is growing stronger. And we have to mount an offensive. We have to be able to, we have to speak out. I think anybody like thinks, because most people are not even talking. Like, most people on the internet aren't saying anything. They're just observing. And the loudest people are the most negative. And it is this loud minority. And we just got to be more vocal about it, because, as they say, there's more of us.
Let's go to some other comments. There's been a lot of chatter in our live chat about the next animated Star Wars series.
Yes.
Brandon asked, what do you think the next unannounced animated show could be? Matthew Hardy thinks that a show focused on the hidden path would be a good idea. F105, hey, where's he at? I said, Brad Rao choked up briefly when I said to him at Lucasfilm, so you're here to work on your next show with Omega and Ventress. Brandon chimes in that a Clone Rebellion show with Rex would be cool, since we don't know how he removed Wolf's chip before Rebels. And Matthew Hardy agrees that our Clone Rebellion show could actually fit in the context of a hidden path show. What do we think a future what do we think about the possibility of what the future of Star Wars animation is? Hidden path, Clone Rebellion, something else?
I'm very conflicted about all these discussions, because on one hand, obviously, major Clone Wars fan, big fan of the Bad Batch. I love that era. I would love to see it continue. And I love the idea of bringing in the hidden path, because there's so many storylines, so many characters. There's like the path itself. It's like, oh, could you bring in Roken? Could you bring in Cal Kestis? Like, there's so many different threads you could weave into an animated show like that and put in that era. And there's so many places you could go with that I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. Not to mention the clone element, but I am, on the other hand, going like, we've had a lot of clone stories. Like, I even myself, as a big Clone Wars fan, I'm just like, maybe it is time to move on from this era, let it sit for a while, and maybe just kind of move on to something else, which leads me to, that whole idea, we've talked about it for years, of just like doing something in the sequel era that is, a show doing what Clone Wars did for the prequel trilogy, which I think is desperately needed, bringing that show back and giving it to sequel fans, which I think, again, going back to all the toxic fandom stuff and all the kind, has been through a lot, and they still have stood by those films. And I think giving them something really to latch onto, especially the kids, I think it's really, really important, because there's a lot of story there, a lot of possibilities, a lot of stuff you could do with that. And yes, filling in some gaps, because like the prequels, those movies are not perfect. And I think you could do a lot to move those forward and bring them back into the light. And I don't know. I hope it's something different. That's my ultimate idea. Whether it's Old Republic, New Republic, New Jedi Order, past sequel trilogy, something different is what I kind of am hoping for.
Okay, Hannah, what about you? What are you thinking as a possibility?
It's so hard, because I've been thinking about this ever since Bad Batch ended. And I think there's just, it's like similar thoughts. I think, the stories that we've told in this Clone Wars era has been so reverent and powerful to me. And it's hard to say that I don't want more. And I don't think I can. I can't. I like, if we said, hey, we're going to get another show exploring, the Amiga future with Ventress, that storyline, I would not be opposed. I wouldn't be mad about it. I would be very, very excited for that. But I think there might be more creative, what's the word? Maybe just more creative interest to explore another era of Star Wars with animation. We can see how, is it the big Obi-Wan Kenobi show that's going to bring in millions of people and they'll tune in just for the animated show? Probably not. But is it a show that fans, even if it's in a smaller number, really can connect to and delve deep into? I think so. And Bad Batch is a great example of that. I think Star Wars fans that are, like to watch all the content and have watched Bad Batch, they know those characters very, very well. and have stepped into that world quite well. So I think having a show in a different time period can really lend itself to a different era for Star Wars in Galaxy timeline, whether that's a Empire timeline sort of show or I think a lot of answers my most common answer is just a post Return of the Jedi show with our main characters, with our favorite three. Would be, I think, the fan in me answering that. But I think realistically, we could get either the most likely is going to be an Amiga Ventress, The Path sort of show, or even something post Mandoverse, or even in Mandoverse till after Mandoverse era. But yes, that's what I think is going down.
Yeah. To me, there is still one unfinished piece of business to the Clone Wars era, and that is the sort of. I feel like they need to close out Rex's story in some way that takes him from where he's at in Bad Batch, which is where he's very actively involved in doing stuff, to where he's at in Rebels, where he's just chilling on his ATTE, fishing with his buddies. There's something that's gotta go down there that changes, puts Rex on a different path for the time being. And I don't know what that is. I don't know what that story is, but I feel like that story needs to be told to round out the sort of Clone Wars era. We got the kind of the conclusion to the Ahsoka story in Siege of Mandalore, got a conclusion-ish to Rex and Siege of Mandalore as well. If that had been the end for both of them, I think that would have been fine. But because they chose to actively like continue Rex's story within the Bad Batch, it feels like now they've opened it up in a way that it needs to be finished. Ahsoka, they did the one Tales of the Jedi episode that's post Siege of Mandalore, and that sort of they told like the entire story within that. But for Rex, I feel like there's still a larger something that needs to happen to sort of put a button on this era. So a mini series, 6 episodes, 12 episodes, whatever. That might be enough to wrap this up. Ultimately, though, I do agree. Like the future does need to go beyond the Clone Wars era. It needs to go beyond Bad Batch. It needs to go beyond what has been established in those shows. And but where that is, I genuinely I don't know, because on one hand I'm like, Luke's Jedi Academy, that'd be awesome, but we know where that ultimately winds up, and we've seen that flashback moment in Last Jedi, and I almost, because we've seen that, I almost don't want to see anything else from it. Not because that stuff is bad in Last Jedi, but because I really like it. And I don't want them to like screw with that. I don't want them to like feel like they have to build out this other story around it. It's why I've always avoided the Kylo and the Knights of Ren comic book series, is because I don't want them to screw with that. I don't want to know. I don't want like something where it's like different than how it seems in the movie. Like I like how it is in the movie. Just leave it be. And what little I've heard about that comic book series, I'm like, no, stop messing with it. Stop messing with it.
Me too.
Leave it be. As I've always avoided it for that reason. And so I don't want the animation to go there either. I would like to maybe just like pick some era that hasn't really been explored, High Republic, before that, Old Republic, and do like a Rebel style show there, where you're not trying to tell the entire story of an era. You're just trying to tell the story of a handful of characters within an era and how they impact it and how they're impacted by it. I think sort of the Rebels model for storytelling is the way forward. But pick a new era and invent a new set of characters that we can fall in love with, the same way we did with Ahsoka and Rex and Hunter, Wrecker, Tech, Echo, and Crosshair, and of course Kanan, Ezra, Hera, Sabine, and Zeb.
Yeah, and look, we joke about it, but like Young Jedi Adventures is genuinely like watching that show. It's it's really fun and obviously just a delightful show because it's it's not taking it too seriously. But it does take Star Wars very seriously. It's very true to it. It's not. Yes, it is made for kids, but it's definitely the storytelling and the people behind it are clearly like trying to tell a Star Wars story. And I think that show presents like, okay, this is something completely removed from this and completely removed from the Skywalker saga, but still staying true to Star Wars. And I think, yeah, I mean, I would love and like a true, like, I don't say true, like, not, I don't want to dismiss Young Jedi Adventures, but like something that is maybe more geared towards a older audience, but set in the same era, because there's so much stuff that can be done. And yes, you have those great moments where apparently Maz Kanata or Huang shows up, and that's great. But it is dealing with things because it's something we've talked about before, how like you have those, it is weird how we have had all this history of Star Wars animation, and we have not just that, but history with the Clone Wars. And the Clone Wars is about so many different characters, but it's primarily about Ahsoka and Anakin. Like, it's their story. It's Anakin Skywalker, one of the biggest faces and names in Star Wars history. And, it helped that George Lucas was involved, but still, ultimately there was a lot of expectations and a lot of fan stuff and, theories wrapped up in that character. You're talking about throwing, expectations tenfold on a show about Luke, Han, and Leia and how they treat those characters. And, you're not going to have ultimate creative freedom when you're dealing with Han, Luke, and Leia. We know what happens to those characters. We know where they go. And I've noticed in the comics, they have this Battle of Jakku thing coming up in like kind of the big finale, or maybe it's the beginning of the new things. I don't know. It's, Han, Luke, and Leia, we're going to get their perspective on the Battle of Jakku, and that's really interesting. But I am curious, like, they've left so much of the stuff open. Like, are we ever going to get any of it outside of the comics? I don't know. I would love a show in that era, but again, it's like, how much can you do with that? Should we even be going back to those characters? Should we just leave them alone and just go with, as again, something new, someone new?
It's an interesting question, a question I'm sure they are working on day and night at Lucasfilm Animation out there in San Francisco, trying to figure out what this next story is, if they don't already know it. I suspect they already know what the next story is, and it wouldn't surprise me if they are well into development of it, maybe even have recorded some episodes of it. And my hope is that the next animated series is announced the same way Tales of the Jedi was, in the schedule for Star Wars Celebration. I want to see a random panel in the Star Wars Celebration Japan schedule that just says random Star Wars title, and we just find out that that's where we're going to learn everything we need to know about that future Star Wars story. But we will continue to speculate and discuss that in the weeks to come. But for now, for tonight, I think we can begin to wrap things up for this week. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We will be back next week, same time, same place, to continue discussing all things Star Wars. Who knows what will happen between now and then. Rumor has it, I heard a rumor that Ben has some sort of challenge in the works for all of us. We were told before we knew that Chris wasn't going to make the show to have our whiteboards ready. So I was ready. I got mine out.
was ready.
I was ready. I was so ready to be part for this trivia challenge, or whatever the hell it is that Ben had, and that Chris had to cancel on us.
Well,
and now we're left to find out.
All I'll say is, it's not quite trivia. It's something adjacent.
I'm ready for it.
Something I've been cooking up for quite a long time that I've had in my background.
Yay.
I'm very, very excited to share it, but not tonight. No, Chris. Chris, if you're out there, no, I was looking out for you tonight. They wanted to do it. They wanted to leave you out.
You did. We were like, no, Chris, let's go.
We were really pushing before the show to do the game.
Also, Also, there is a chance Chris could kick your butt at this show. I'm just saying. Chris could kick your butt at this.
Okay, interesting. Is it obscure trivia about Star Wars Facebook pages
I'm not
from
telling you
2009?
what. I ain't telling you nothing. Okay, that's all the teases you're getting. Things. Just be on the lookout. Let's hope for a full house and no news next week. How about that?
Okay, I rarely hope for no news, but who knows? Maybe we will. Maybe this is the week. Maybe this is the week we hope for it.
One piece of news. Okay, Lucasfilm, if you're listening, one piece of news.
Just one piece of news. Also, Dragon Con was this past weekend. I haven't seen if the qualifier test has been posted anywhere.
It's out there. It's out there.
Well, it might be that time. It might be that time again to get it back onto our trivia challenge. See if Ben can go. What are you going for now? 4 years in a row. 4 years in a row.
I've lost count.
Yeah, no, I'll start training now.
Start training so we can beat Ben. But all that's coming up in the future weeks. As always, tune in live Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel and Facebook page and Twitch channel. Subscribe to all of those places, and of course, we'll be in your podcast feeds on Friday mornings, like always. Ben, thank you for hosting, as always. I don't know what else to say. You've already teased something for next week, so I don't know what else you want to say. Have anything else to plug?
Yeah, no, I don't. If I say anything, I'll give it away. So I'm not going to say anything more. All I'll say is this is a great episode this week. See, I told you we didn't have a lot to work with, but we made it work, and it was a great episode. And who knows? I mean, literally. We could have the Mandalorian and Grogu teaser next week. Like, literally could happen. I mean, there is footage. There is footage out there. We've seen some footage. It's a film that's happening, it exists, so probably not, but who knows? And whatever else they might throw at us.
You're setting people's expectations high for next week. We're gonna have a Mando and Grogu trailer.
Hyping this show
I said
up.
Maybe. I said maybe. I said I heard a rumor. Actually, no. So. We'll see.
Let's bring that back somehow.
Yeah.
Hannah, thank you as always for being on.
Thank you, my friend. Another great show. Good times. Nothing too crazy to roast you about today, except for the way you say Poe Dameron.
Dameron.
Hell are you saying? Dameron.
Hannah,
out in the maple tree.
I'll just point out that you said H earlier, which is to me, just as worse, just as bad as Dameron or Dameron. No, it's H.
H-E-double-A.
H-E double hockey sticks. Good lord.
I like how much you're pondering. You're like thinking about this. You're like, I really need to.
I can't think how I say. If someone's like, "Hey, spell your name."
Yeah.
Not that Hannah's all that hard to spell. Although people can't figure out if I've got a H at the end. Okay, what did I say there? Did I say H?
You said H.
Yeah, you did.
That must be it. There we go.
I don't know what the point of this little exchange
I don't know
is,
what the hell we're talking about, but thanks for having me.
Yeah. Everybody go subscribe to the Raeside. Lots of good stuff going on over there.
Hannah with a H. That's what I should change my name to. There you go.
Hannah with a H. Of course. What else? How does Chris usually do this? Subscribe to the show. Super chat with us next week. Become a channel member between weeks. Subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts and other podcast platforms. Join the Discord and watch Young Jedi Adventures over and over and over again with Ben. Join the game nights. Maybe that's coming up as well. And also, the podcast network. That's what we forgot. They've got a whole network of podcasts, including the Raeside, Ion Cannon, Tales from Beyond the Galaxy, Tractor Beam, and more. All good shows, all worth your time. All right, that is it. We'll be back in 7 days' time. For Chris, who's not here, and Ben and Hannah and all the other wonderful people at the Star Wars Underworld, my name is Dominic, and may the Force be with you. It's a H. I mean, rap.
Oh, man.